In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Well, good morning. It is wonderful to be back with you all after taking some time away just after Christmas. It's a real joy to be back here and worshiping with All Saints and our All Saints family. I pray that 2025 is off to a wonderful start for each of you. But there's this thing that's been happening last week or so, ever since Christmas Day. I have a strong suspicion I'm not alone in this, but I just want to check it just a little bit. And it's that every once in a while over the last week, it will occur to me that I have absolutely no idea what day it is. Is anybody else dealing with this? Yeah. It's like Christmas and New Year's both falling in the middle of the week completely turn my calendar upside down, and I'm not really sure what day it is, sometimes what time it is during a day, where I'm supposed to be next, whether the meal that I just ate was breakfast or lunch or just some random cheese or something. None of it makes any sense. So please, it sounds like I've got some friends here who are also in this boat. And the strangest thing is, at first, it was kind of exhilarating. Kind of felt nice to be disconnected from the patterns and the rhythms and routines that dictate so much of what I'm supposed to be doing and when I'm supposed to be doing it. But in the last couple days, something has flipped, and it is no longer exhilarating. It is exhausting. I'm tired of that being. Mom and Dad can hardly wait for school to start again, or something like that. But not because I'm tired of my kids being around. I've loved that. It's just because I'm ready for some kind of normalcy to return to life. We are creatures of habit, and it seems that we thrive on a routine. We don't mind a break from it every once in a while, but we use those regular patterns and routines and rituals of life to help us make sense of what can otherwise feel like a fairly random universe. I think we Episcopalians are especially bent in this direction. I know that that's part of what drew me into the church and ultimately to the priesthood. We love, for instance, that our service is predictable, that the words we say stay more or less the same every single week, that the actions and the words of the liturgy always draw us in the same direction, which is up to the table, to the altar, to receive the body and blood of Christ every single Sunday. And all of that predictability, all of that routine, all of that normal sense of being is so good and so holy. But we need to take care that we don't let those routines or the other routines of life get in the way of how God, who I'm reminded Archbishop Tutu would often refer to as the God of surprises, we don't want to get those in the way of how God might desire to make himself known in all kinds of new and unexpected ways. Tomorrow, the church celebrates the Feast of the Epiphany, and we get a preview of that feast in our readings this morning. It's when the wise men, or I actually prefer to call them that more traditional word, the Magi, it's when they follow a strange, wild star, finally making their way to the party that is the incarnation. It's when they come to praise the reality that God has come to be with us as a real human body in the Christ child, and they come to adore him with real human gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. For the Western Church, we tend to focus on December 25th as the main event, the most important day in this season of incarnation. But that's not true for Eastern Christians. For Eastern Christians, the Epiphany is where it's at. And in some ways, it makes sense. The Epiphany is the day when those who shouldn't have been invited to the party finally show up. The Magi are non-Jewish people, stargazers from the land of captivity, looking to practice some sort of fortune-telling in the way that any good first-century Jewish person would have found more or less blasphemous. I mean, the word magi has the same root as the word magician. And yet this morning, here they are, the wrong kind of people showing up to worship God despite all the reasons they should not be there. So maybe we should focus just a little bit more on the celebration of Epiphany than we tend to, because it's the day when the wrong people show up to worship. And who are we if not the wrong people? We are the people who have looked for God in all the wrong places, maybe wealth or status or success or sin or some interesting combination of all of that. seeking to find belonging and hope and meaning in all kinds of things that are not God. And yet here we are. Try as we might to find him in all that isn't him, he has drawn us to himself in spite of ourselves. We are the Magi, the wrong kind of people seeking God in the wrong places and stunned by the fact that we haven't found him. The truth is more glorious than that. It's that in the Christ, he has found us. The God of surprises is at work here and now among us. And that's not the last word when it comes to thinking about this God of surprises. The Magi and our own journey and how all that fits together, there's another wrinkle that the Epiphany gives us, and it's especially important as we begin a new year. It comes right at the end of today's gospel. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. So we all know that Herod is a bad guy. The scriptures were read in first century, circles. Herod would have been said, and he would have been booed and hissed like out loud as the reading happened. He's a bad guy. But the Magi are from far away, and they would have had no idea about all that. So they happily tell him about their mission to find this child with no clue that Herod is full of evil intentions. But the wise men pay attention. They are warned, the scriptures tell us, in a dream, maybe warned by an angel of God, not to return to Herod, not to give him the details about who Jesus is or where he can be found. And they return home, we are told, by another road. Returning home by the same road would have meant for them, and perhaps for the Christ they'd come to worship and adore, death and destruction. And there weren't exactly good maps available to them in those days, so they were forced to do something so difficult, so hard for them, so hard for those of us who love our routines and our patterns and predictability. They had to leave the safety and security of the known road and turn down a different path. They had to exercise a ruthless trust that the same God who'd brought them safe thus far was the same God who would lead them home. And I put to us, friends, that it is possible we are in the same boat as we begin a new year. There just might be things, familiar roads we've walked in your life, in my life, in our life together that have been good and holy and helpful to us in days gone by, but they are now keeping us from returning home by another road. They are keeping us from finding God down those other roads. Or maybe not. In my life, it's often been that I've had different seasons. Sometimes in life, I've needed those old roads. That's where God has been found for me. And sticking to them has been grace upon grace. But there have been other seasons when I'm called to find God in new ways, in uncertain places, in unexpected challenges. And all of this is ultimately a call to discernment, to worship the Christ, to pay attention, to be aware of the warnings God gives us, the dreams that God gives us, and to follow the next right step we are called to make. If that step is in the security of your current patterns and routines and lives, thanks be to God. We must not let our hunger for something new or something different or something more cause us to fail to find God right in the middle of our ordinary days. If it's on some new road, some new adventure, some new challenge, thanks be to God. We must not let our fear of the unknown allow us to create an idol of what has been, to cause us to fail to encounter the God of surprises in all kinds of places, in all kinds of unexpected people, in all kinds of unexpected ways. So pay attention. Pay attention as we embark on this new year. Follow the wild star that the love of God is showing to you. And do not be afraid. Never be afraid.